The Nexus Prime station hung like a crystalline spiderweb against the infinite darkness of space, its transparent outer shell revealing layers of complex infrastructure that defied traditional architectural understanding. 17 different environmental zones interconnected through pressurized corridors, each designed to accommodate the unique atmospheric and gravitational requirements of diverse galactic species. Dr. Elena Rodriguez adjusted her universal translator, a delicate device embedded behind her right ear that translated not just words, but contextual nuances of communication. The device was a marvel of human engineering, capable of interpreting subtle emotional undertones that most alien translation systems missed entirely. Around her, delegates from across the known galaxy moved with a mixture of purpose and carefully controlled tension. The current conference represented more than a simple diplomatic gathering. It was a critical negotiation about resource distribution in the newly charted Orion 9 sector, a region rich with rare mineral compounds that could revolutionize interstellar technology. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for less than 3 generations, yet they had quickly established themselves as formidable negotiators. Elena's research team had spent years studying the complex ecosystem of the Orion 9 sector. Their comprehensive report challenged existing allocation models, revealing inefficiencies that would cost multiple species billions in potential resources. She understood the political minefield she was navigating. Each alien delegation represented centuries of established trade relationships, intricate cultural hierarchies, and deeply entrenched economic interests. The conference hall itself was a testament to galactic diversity. Holographic displays shifted and recalibrated continuously, providing real-time translation and contextual information for each species present. To her left, a Corvan diplomat, a being composed of interconnected crystalline structures that resembled a living, breathing geometric sculpture, communicated through precise light pulses. To her right, a Mrenx representative, whose exoskeleton shifted colors with each emotional response, listened with multiple sensory appendages. Her partner, Dr. Kai Chen, stood slightly behind her, his presence both supportive and strategically positioned. A former systems analyst with specialized training in interspecies conflict resolution, Kai understood the delicate dance of diplomatic negotiations better than most. His seemingly casual stance betrayed years of specialized training. Every movement calculated, every observation noted. The Nexus Prime's artificial gravity generators hummed softly, a constant reminder of the technological marvel that allowed such diverse species to coexist in a single space. Elena's research had been groundbreaking, challenging long-established assumptions about resource management and interstellar cooperation. Her team had developed predictive models that demonstrated how more equitable resource distribution could benefit all participating species, not just the most powerful. As she prepared to present her findings, Elena was acutely aware of the potential consequences. The current resource allocation model favored established galactic powers, species that had dominated trade routes and technological development for millennia. Her proposal threatened those established power structures, promising to redistribute wealth and opportunity in ways that would fundamentally reshape galactic economics. The holographic display before her flickered to life, generating a 3-dimensional representation of the Orion 9 sector. Mineral density maps, ecological impact projections, and potential technological innovations danced in intricate patterns. Each visualization told a story of potential, of untapped resources, and transformative possibilities. Delegates from the Zornak Confederation shifted uncomfortably. Their scaled forms reflected the tension in the room, iridescent skin rippling with barely contained anticipation. They were known for their aggressive negotiation tactics, a species that had built its galactic reputation through intimidation and strategic pressure. Elena took a deep breath. This moment represented years of research, countless late nights, and a vision of a more collaborative galactic community. Her presentation would challenge everything these delegates believed about resources, cooperation, and the potential of emerging species. The conference hall fell silent. All eyes, biological, technological, and hybrid, focused on the human researcher who was about to reshape their understanding of interstellar economics. The silence that followed Alina's presentation was more volatile than any spoken word. Krastak, the senior Zornak diplomatic representative, stood motionless for several heartbeats. His massive form dominated the conference chamber, scales shifting from deep emerald to a mottled crimson, a biological tell of extreme emotional distress among his species. Holographic data points continued to hover in the air, each projection systematically dismantling the Zornak Confederation's long-standing resource claims. Alina's research was meticulous, leaving no room for diplomatic maneuvering or traditional intimidation tactics. The mineral rights to the Orion 9 sector would fundamentally redistribute economic power across multiple star systems. The Corvin delegates communicated through rapid light pulses, their crystalline structures vibrating with collective anticipation. Nearby, the Mrank's representatives clicked their exoskeletal appendages, a sign of intense intellectual engagement. Every species present understood the magnitude of what was unfolding. Krastak's translator implant crackled with barely contained rage. "Your calculations fail to account for historical precedent," he growled, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the station's structural integrity. The Zornak Confederation has maintained trade routes in this sector for 7 generations. Alina remained composed, her response measured and precise. "Historical precedent is not a justification for inefficient resource management," she countered. "Our models demonstrate a 43.7% increase in overall economic output with a more balanced distribution approach. This benefits all participating species, including the Zornak Confederation." The diplomatic tension became a tangible force. Station sensors detected minute changes in atmospheric pressure, a reflection of the emotional turbulence building in the conference chamber. Kai observed silently, his posture relaxed but alert, a human technique of maintaining composure under extreme stress. What happened next would be replayed across thousands of communication networks within solar cycles. Krastak's movement was so fast that most biological sensors struggled to track it. In a burst of primal rage, he struck Alina with devastating force. Her body crashed into a nearby holographic display, which shattered in a cascade of light and fractured data projections. Delicate technological components exploded outward, creating a momentary storm of sparkling debris. The surrounding delegates froze. Physical confrontations were not uncommon in Zornak diplomatic interactions, but this assault carried a deeper message of intimidation. It was a calculated display of physical superiority, meant to demonstrate dominance and suppress intellectual challenge. Most species present had protocols for such incidents. The Corvin delegates would typically initiate a diplomatic quarantine. The Mranks would log a formal protest through their intricate communication networks. But humans were still relatively new to galactic politics, and no one was certain how they would respond. Kai Chen's eyes never left Krastak. Something shifted in his demeanor, a subtle change that went unnoticed by most alien species, but would later be studied extensively by xenopsychologists. It was the calm before a storm, a moment of absolute focus that human military trainers referred to as combat clarity. Alina, despite the violent blow, maintained her composure. A slight trickle of blood ran from her temple, but her eyes remained sharp, calculating. She had known Krastak would react violently. The research was designed not just to present data, but to expose the fundamental weaknesses in the current galactic resource management system. Station security personnel hesitated. The complex jurisdictional rules of Nexus Prime made intervention complicated. Each species had different standards for acceptable diplomatic conduct, and a physical altercation between a Zornak representative and a human researcher existed in a legal gray area. The holographic remnants of Alina's presentation continued to flicker, like ghostly witnesses to the unfolding drama. Mineral density maps, economic projection models, and ecological impact charts danced in fragmented patterns, a visual metaphor for the disruption about to unfold. Kai took a single step forward. His movement was deliberate, controlled, Nothing like the explosive violence of the Zornak diplomat. But in that step, something fundamental was about to change in galactic politics. The universe held its breath. Time seemed to crystallize in the conference chamber. The shattered holographic displays continued to flicker, casting fractured light across the faces of stunned diplomatic representatives. Alina's physical impact had left a spider web of cracks in the station's reinforced display panel, a visual testament to the violence of Krastak's assault. Dr. Kai Chen's response defied every expectation programmed into the station's xenocultural predictive algorithms, where most species would have immediately demanded legal action or launched into a verbal counterattack. Kai remained absolutely still. His stillness was not weakness, but a calculated form of presence that spoke volumes. Years of specialized training had prepared him for moments like these. Before joining the diplomatic research court, Kai had served in a classified human adaptation unit, a team designed to study and respond to extreme interspecies conflict scenarios. His current demeanor was the result of intensive psychological conditioning and tactical training that went far beyond traditional diplomatic preparation. The Corvan delegates began to pulse with complex light patterns, their version of whispering and speculation. Nearby, the Mrex representatives clicked their exoskeletal appendages in a rhythm that suggested both confusion and anticipation. No one understood how a human would respond to such a direct physical provocation. Alina, despite the blow that would have incapacitated most species, was already running a diagnostic on her neural implant. A thin trickle of blood ran from her temple, but her eyes remained sharp, calculating. She caught Kai's gaze, a silent communication that spoke of years of partnership and shared understanding. Krastak's moment of triumph began to waver. The Zornak diplomat had expected immediate chaos. Physical confrontations in his culture were designed to demonstrate dominance, to break the opponent's will through overwhelming force. But Kai Chen stood like a statue, his presence more powerful than any physical threat. The station's advanced sensor systems began collecting data at unprecedented rates. Xenoph psychologists would later study this moment frame by frame, trying to understand the complex dynamics unfolding in the conference chamber. Kai's heart rate remained remarkably steady, a biological impossibility by most species standards. Station security personnel exchanged uncertain glances. The jurisdictional complexities of Nexus Prime made intervention challenging. Each species present had different protocols for diplomatic confrontations, and a physical assault between a Zornak representative and a human researcher existed in a legal gray area. Kai's background was known only to a select few. His previous assignments had involved conflict resolution in some of the most challenging regions of human-explored space. He understood that true power was not about immediate reaction, but about creating a moment of absolute uncertainty. The environmental controls of the conference chamber seemed to shift imperceptibly. Experienced diplomats would later describe a change in atmospheric pressure, a subtle tension that spoke of something fundamental about to change. The station itself seemed to hold its breath. Alina's neural diagnostic completed. Minor concussion, slight cellular disruption, nothing that her advanced medical implants couldn't rapidly repair. She allowed herself the slightest smile, a micro-expression that would have been missed by most alien species, but spoke volumes to Kai. Krastak's scales continued to shift color, a biological indicator of mounting confusion and growing unease. The human's lack of immediate response was more terrifying than any physical counterattack. It suggested a level of control, of strategic thinking, that the Zornak had not anticipated. The holographic remnants of Alina's presentation continued to dance in the background. Mineral density maps, economic projections, ecological impact charts. They seemed to pulse with a life of their own, silent witnesses to the drama unfolding. Kai took a single step forward. It was a movement of absolute precision, each muscle group engaged with calculated efficiency. The conference chamber fell into a silence so complete that the soft hum of the station's environmental systems became momentarily deafening. Something was about to change. the entire galaxy could feel it. The first movement was so subtle that most alien species would have missed it entirely. Kai Chen's body transformed from a state of perfect stillness to fluid motion, a transition that defied the traditional understanding of physical combat. Where other species relied on brute strength or specialized combat techniques, humans had developed something entirely different, a martial philosophy that blended biomechanical efficiency with psychological warfare. Krastak towered over Kai, his reptilian form a massive wall of muscle and scaled armor. The Zornak species had conquered multiple star systems through physical intimidation, their bodies evolutionarily designed for combat. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, Krastak represented the pinnacle of his species' physical capabilities, a living weapon that had crushed opponents across dozens of planetary conflicts. Kai's approach was a study in calculated precision. Each step was a mathematical equation of force, balance, and potential energy. His training had gone far beyond traditional martial arts, incorporating advanced understanding of xenobiology, biomechanical stress points, and psychological manipulation. Where most would see a simple physical confrontation, Kai saw a complex system waiting to be strategically dismantled. The first contact was almost imperceptible. A slight redirection of Krastak's momentum, a touch so precise that it seemed to violate the basic principles of physical interaction. The Zornak diplomat found his massive form suddenly off balance, his own weight and aggression turned against him with minimal effort. Station sensors struggled to track the interaction. Human movement patterns were fundamentally different from other known species, a combination of predictive analysis, muscle group coordination, and psychological conditioning that defied standard combat algorithms. Xenobiological researchers would later spend decades attempting to understand the complexity of human physical interaction. Alina watched with a mixture of professional interest and personal pride. Their partnership had been forged in some of the most challenging research environments humanity had encountered. She understood that this was more than a physical confrontation. It was a demonstration of human potential. Krastak's combat instincts were formidable. Generations of evolutionary pressure had created a species optimized for physical conflict. His first counterattack was a blur of motion, a strike that would have shattered the skeletal structure of most known species. But Kai was already moving, his body finding the precise angles of least resistance. The conference chamber became a canvas of motion. Each movement was a complex dialogue of force, momentum, and strategic positioning. Kai didn't fight to defeat Krastak. He fought to demonstrate a fundamental truth about human capability. Every motion was a lesson, every redirection, a statement about the nature of conflict resolution. Zornak biology was built for direct confrontation. Powerful muscle groups, redundant neural pathways, a skeletal structure designed to absorb and redirect massive amounts of kinetic energy. But human adaptation worked differently. Where the Zornak saw strength as a linear equation, humans understood it as a complex, multidimensional system. Holographic displays continued to flicker in the background, the remnants of Alina's earlier presentation casting ghostly light across the confrontation. The mineral density maps and economic projections seemed to pulse in rhythm with Kai's movements, a visual metaphor of human potential. 3 distinct strikes. That was all it took, each precisely calculated to disrupt Krastak's biomechanical integrity without causing permanent damage. The Zornak diplomat found himself systematically dismantled, not through brute force, but through an almost surgical understanding of physical interaction. The station's xenobiological research teams would later describe the confrontation as a probabilistic combat resolution. It wasn't fighting in the traditional sense, but a complex negotiation conducted through physical interaction. Kai demonstrated that human potential went far beyond simple physical capabilities. As Krastak's massive form began to collapse, the conference chamber fell into absolute silence. The alien delegates present understood they were witnessing something fundamental, a redefinition of what it meant to be a spacefaring species. Alina's smile was almost imperceptible. just another day in human diplomatic research. The first transmission reached the central communication hub of the Galactic Collaborative Network within 17 standard solar minutes. Quantum entanglement communication arrays processed the visual data from the Nexus Prime incident with unprecedented speed, broadcasting the encounter across multiple star systems almost instantaneously. Xenorchivists would later mark this moment as a critical turning point in interstellar understanding. The video capture, a seemingly simple confrontation between a human researcher and a Zornak diplomatic representative, began to transform the collective galactic perception of humanity. On the communication hub of the Mrenx Collaborative, senior information analysts watched the footage with growing fascination. Their exoskeletal appendages moved in complex patterns, translating the visual data into intricate information matrices. The humans' movement defied every known combat classification in their extensive databases. Professor Jintak of the Cordon Research Collective leaned closer to the holographic display, her crystalline structure vibrating with intellectual excitement. Observe the biomechanical efficiency. She communicated through precise light pulses. This is not mere physical confrontation. This is a complex system of motion and countermotion that suggests an entirely new approach to conflict resolution. Across thousands of planetary networks, the video began to spread. Communication algorithms struggled to categorize the content. Was it a diplomatic incident? A display of physical capability? A statement of technological superiority? The human response existed in a category beyond traditional understanding. The Zornak communication networks initially attempted to suppress the transmission. Their diplomatic protocols had always relied on maintaining an image of absolute physical dominance. But in the age of quantum communication, information moved faster than any censorship attempt. Research teams began to analyze every millisecond of the encounter. Advanced sensor data revealed layers of complexity that went far beyond simple physical interaction. The human's movement suggested a deep understanding of biomechanics, psychological manipulation, and strategic positioning that challenged fundamental assumptions about combat and conflict resolution. Xenopsychology departments across multiple star systems began emergency research sessions. The human's response was not just a physical act, but a complex communication strategy. Every movement told a story, a narrative of capability, restraint, and calculated precision. On the human research colonies, Alina and Kai became unexpected icons. Their professional research team found themselves at the center of a galactic conversation about human potential. Communication requests flooded their research channels. Diplomatic bodies, scientific institutions, and cultural exchange programs all sought to understand the deeper implications of the encounter. The Galactic Collaborative Network's primary information aggregation systems began to compile a comprehensive analysis. Billions of data points converged to create a new understanding of human capabilities. The previous classifications, emerging species, new diplomatic entity, suddenly seemed woefully inadequate. Zornak diplomatic corps found themselves in an unprecedented position. Their traditional methods of intimidation and physical dominance had been systematically dismantled, not through counter-aggression, but through a display of calculated efficiency that suggested a fundamentally different approach to conflict. Communication networks began to track the spread of the video. Within hours, it had been viewed across more than 3,000 planetary systems. Each viewing generated additional layers of analysis, discussion, and revaluation of human potential. The most fascinating responses came from unexpected sources. Xenobiological research teams began to revisit human historical records. What they discovered was a species defined not by physical limitations, but by an unprecedented capacity for adaptation, innovation, and strategic thinking. Professor Lim Xo of the Interstellar Anthropological Institute summarized the collective findings in a groundbreaking communication. Humans do not overcome challenges through singular approaches. They transform the very nature of the challenge itself. The video became more than a record of a diplomatic incident. It transformed into a galactic case study of human potential, a moment that would be studied, discussed, and analyzed for generations to come. Somewhere in the vast complexity of space, the universe seemed to pause and reconsider everything it thought it knew about humanity. The diplomatic complex of the Galactic Collaborative Network resembled a massive crystalline structure, its geometric chambers designed to accommodate the physiological and communication needs of dozens of different species. On this particular solar cycle, those chambers buzzed with an unprecedented level of tension. Diplomatic representatives from the Zornak Confederation found themselves in an impossible position. The traditional methods of intimidation and political maneuvering that had served them for generations had been systematically dismantled by a single human interaction. Their senior diplomatic council convened an emergency session, the chamber's environmental controls struggling to manage the collective physiological stress of its members. Ambassador Krullinks, the senior Zornak representative, reviewed the forensic analysis of the Nexus Prime incident for the 17th time. Each viewing revealed new layers of complexity. The human, Dr. Kai Chen, had not simply defended his partner. He had delivered a masterclass in conflict resolution that challenged every fundamental assumption of galactic diplomatic engagement. The formal hearing began with a protocol that had remained unchanged for 7 generations. But nothing about this session would follow traditional expectations. Elena Rodriguez sat before the collaborative committee, her medical implants having fully healed the earlier physical trauma. Her presentation was not a complaint, but a comprehensive analysis of the incident's broader implications. "This is not about punishment," Elena began, her voice carrying a calm that belied the magnitude of the moment. "This is an opportunity to reassess our approach to diplomatic conflict resolution." The committee chamber represented a marvel of interspecies engineering. Atmospheric composition shifted subtly to accommodate the physiological needs of each representative. Translation systems worked in real time, capturing not just words, but contextual nuances that often escaped traditional communication methods. Kai Chen's personnel file became the most studied document in the Galactic Collaborative archives. His background revealed a career path that defied traditional classification. Part researcher, part conflict resolution specialist, part strategic analyst, he represented a new model of human professional development that confused traditional bureaucratic categorizations. The Corvin delegates communicated through intricate light patterns that suggested both fascination and strategic calculation. Their crystalline communication networks had already begun developing new diplomatic protocols based on the analysis of the Nexus Prime incident. Ambassador Krullinks was forced to issue a formal apology, a diplomatic maneuver that went against every instinct of the Zornak cultural approach. The video of the incident had been viewed across more than 4,000 planetary systems. Suppression was impossible, and traditional face-saving mechanisms would only further damage the Zornak diplomatic standing. Elena's proposal was both simple and revolutionary. She suggested the creation of a new interspecies conflict resolution framework, one that prioritized intellectual and strategic capabilities over physical intimidation. The proposed system would incorporate biomechanical analysis, psychological understanding, and collaborative problem-solving techniques. The most surprising element was not the proposal itself, but the level of support it received. Multiple species saw an opportunity to move beyond traditional power dynamics. The human approach suggested a more nuanced method of conflict resolution that could potentially reduce long-standing tensions across multiple star systems. Kai's involvement was carefully managed. He was not presented as a weapon or a threat, but as a representative of a more sophisticated approach to interspecies interaction. His background in research, combined with his specialized training, made him a unique diplomatic asset. The MREX representatives clicked their exoskeletal appendages in a pattern that suggested profound intellectual engagement. Their communication networks had already begun developing new training protocols based on the analysis of human conflict resolution strategies. As the hearing concluded, it became clear that something fundamental had changed. The Zornak Confederation would be required to undergo comprehensive diplomatic retraining. The incident at Nexus Prime was no longer just a moment of conflict. It had become a catalyst for galactic transformation. Alina caught Kai's eye across the diplomatic chamber. A slight smile passed between them, a moment of shared understanding that spoke volumes about their partnership and their vision for a more collaborative future. The universe watched and waited, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding. The research facility orbited a neutron star, its massive computational arrays drawing energy directly from the stellar phenomenon's intense radiation. Hundreds of xenobiological research teams from across the galactic collaborative networks converged to study humanity, a species that had become the most intriguing scientific subject in recent galactic history. Dr. Narration, head of the Interspecies Adaptation Research Institute, studied the holographic projections that filled the central analysis chamber. Thousands of data points from the Nexus Prime incident had been meticulously collected, analyzed, and reconstructed. Each frame of Kai Chen's interaction with the Zornak diplomat revealed layers of complexity that challenged fundamental understanding of physical and cognitive capabilities. The investigation was multifaceted. Biological researchers examined human physiological responses. Psychological analysts parsed communication patterns. Strategic development teams studied human problem-solving approaches. What emerged was not a simple profile of a species, but a complex tapestry of adaptive potential. Human historical records became a primary focus of investigation. Unlike many spacefaring species that had achieved technological advancement through linear progression, humans demonstrated a remarkable capacity for radical adaptation. Their technological and cultural development showed consistent patterns of transformative innovation, solving problems by fundamentally reimagining the nature of the challenge itself. Quantum communication networks began to compile a comprehensive database of human achievements. From surviving extreme planetary conditions to developing communication technologies that bridged seemingly insurmountable biological differences, humans showed a plasticity that defied traditional evolutionary models. The Corvin research teams developed specialized analysis algorithms specifically designed to understand human cognitive processes. Their crystalline computational systems approached the challenge with a mixture of scientific curiosity and strategic assessment. What made humans so uniquely capable of adaptation? Preliminary findings suggested a complex interplay of factors. Human cognitive development was characterized by an unprecedented level of neuroplasticity. Their educational systems emphasized creative problem-solving over rote memorization. Social structures prioritized collaborative innovation, creating a species-wide approach to challenges that was fundamentally different from more hierarchical civilizations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez found herself at the center of this galactic investigation. Her research team became a focal point for understanding human potential. Communication requests flooded their research channels. Every major scientific and diplomatic institution wanted to understand the deeper implications of human capabilities. The most fascinating discoveries came from unexpected sources. Archaeological research teams began to re-examine human historical records with new perspective. Their technological progression was not a smooth curve, but a series of radical transformations. Each major challenge had been met not with incremental improvement, but with fundamental reimagining of existing systems. Kai Chen's personnel file became a comprehensive case study. His background revealed a professional path that defied traditional categorization. Part researcher, part conflict resolution specialist, part strategic analyst. He represented a model of human professional development that challenged existing understanding of specialization. The MRANC's research collectives developed sophisticated predictive models based on human interaction patterns. Their exoskeletal communication networks buzzed with excitement. Humans did not simply respond to challenges. They transformed the very nature of those challenges. Biological analysis revealed additional layers of complexity. Human neural networks showed an unprecedented capacity for rapid reconfiguration. Their immune systems demonstrated adaptive capabilities that went far beyond traditional biological defense mechanisms. Each physiological system seemed designed for continuous adaptation. Interstellar communication networks began to shift their understanding. Humans were no longer classified as an emerging species or a new diplomatic entity. They represented something entirely different, a civilization defined by its capacity for continuous transformation. The research facility's computational arrays processed billions of data points. Holographic displays showed complex webs of human achievements, technological innovations, and adaptive strategies. Each visualization told a story of a species that refused to be constrained by existing limitations. Dr. Lyra Shen summarized the findings in a groundbreaking communication to the Galactic Collaborative Network. Humans are not defined by what they are, but by their capacity to become something entirely new. As the research continued, one thing became increasingly clear. Humanity represented a fundamental shift in understanding of intelligent life's potential. The universe watched and waited to see what would come next. The Galactic Collaborative Network headquarters stood as a testament to interstellar cooperation, a massive structure that defied traditional architectural understanding. Its central chamber could accommodate the unique physiological requirements of 17 different species simultaneously. On this particular solar cycle, the chamber buzzed with an unprecedented level of anticipation. Diplomatic representatives from across known space had gathered to address the fundamental shift triggered by the Nexus Prime incident. What had begun as a simple diplomatic confrontation had transformed into a watershed moment for galactic understanding. Elena Rodriguez and Kai Chen sat at the center of the proceedings, not as defendants or aggressors, but as representatives of a new approach to interstellar interaction. Their presence alone challenged every existing diplomatic protocol. They were researchers, strategists, and diplomats, a combination that defied traditional species categorization. The Zornak delegation entered first, their scaled forms reflecting the complex internal negotiations that had transformed their entire diplomatic approach. Ambassador Krullinks, who had once represented the pinnacle of physical intimidation, now moved with a newfound sense of strategic consideration. Corvin delegates communicated through intricate light patterns that suggested both intellectual excitement and strategic calculation. Their crystalline communication networks had been working overtime, analyzing every aspect of human interaction and potential. The Mrex representatives clicked their exoskeletal appendages in a rhythm that spoke of profound technological and sociological recalibration. Their research teams had developed entirely new communication and conflict resolution protocols based on the analysis of human capabilities. Elena's presentation was unlike any diplomatic communication in galactic history. Instead of traditional posturing, she offered a comprehensive framework for collaborative problem-solving. Her research demonstrated how diverse species could approach challenges through innovative thinking rather than competitive confrontation. Kai's role was equally transformative. His background, part researcher, part strategic analyst, part conflict resolution specialist, represented a new model of professional development that confused traditional bureaucratic classifications. He embodied the human capacity for adaptive expertise. The holographic displays that filled the chamber told a complex story. Visualization matrices showed how human approaches to problem-solving differed fundamentally from existing galactic models. Where other species saw challenges as obstacles to overcome, humans saw them as opportunities for radical reimagining. Historical records were systematically re-examined. Human achievements were no longer viewed as isolated incidents, but as part of a broader pattern of transformative innovation. From technological development to social structures, humans demonstrated an unprecedented capacity for adaptive thinking. The most significant shift was not technological or diplomatic, but philosophical. Humanity represented a new understanding of intelligent life's potential. They were not defined by existing limitations, but by their capacity for continuous transformation. Interstellar communication networks began to recalibrate their understanding of emerging species. Humans were no longer classified as a new or developing civilization. They were something entirely different, a dynamic, adaptive force that challenged fundamental assumptions about progress and potential. The collaborative hearing became more than a diplomatic proceeding. It was a moment of collective recognition. Each species present began to understand that diversity was not about maintaining existing differences, but about creating new possibilities through collaborative innovation. Dr. Narration, representing the Interspecies Adaptation Research Institute, presented a groundbreaking analysis. Human potential was not about individual achievement, but about a species-wide approach to continuous adaptation. Their educational systems, social structures, and technological development all emphasized collaborative problem-solving. Kai caught Alina's eye across the chamber. A subtle smile passed between them, a moment of shared understanding that spoke volumes about their partnership and their vision for a collaborative future. As the proceedings concluded, it became clear that something fundamental had changed. The incident at Nexus Prime was no longer just a moment of conflict. It had become a catalyst for a new understanding of intelligent life's potential. The universe watched and waited, sensing that a new chapter was about to unfold. Somewhere in the vast complexity of space, the boundaries of possibility expanded.